Hello and welcome to this channel. My name is Emma and I am a crochet teacher here at Nitty Nutty Yarn Studio in Cardiff in Wales, and I've been teaching how to crochet now for well over a year, and over that year I've met lots of people who have come to me with various different reasons of why they think they can't crochet. And as we've sat down together and got going with my crochet lessons, I've uncovered many different reasons that I think could be a hindrance and holding you up in your crochet journey as such. So grab yourself a cuppa, settle in, and let's get started and work out what it is that's holding you up with your crochet. Okay, so I'm going to break these 10 reasons into two separate parts. The second half is going to be mainly about like the practicality, so the type of hook you use, the yarn you use, various different bits and pieces that are more about the practical side of getting started with crochet and how that might be holding you up. The first half is going to be mainly more of environmental reasons, like just giving you like more personal reasons as to why you might not be able to get started with your crochet journey. So let's dive in with number one. Okay, so diving straight in, number one is why. So what is the reason? Why are you learning to crochet? Why would you like to learn? Is it because you want something different to do in the evenings? Are you sick of scrolling through your phone in the evenings or just watching rubbish on the telly, the same things over and over again? Do you want to give yourself something that just distracts you from everyday life? Or maybe it is that you just want to make your own clothes or make clothes for other people. Maybe you want to make things to sell. I think if you find yourself a real reason as to why you want to crochet, that will help give you the drive to keep learning, because crochet is a hard craft and it won't come quickly or naturally. So for some people it definitely comes easier, but it doesn't for everybody. So unless you have something that's going to cause you to want to keep picking up that hook and that yarn, it's likely you'll just put it all away in the back of a cupboard and it won't see the light of day again. Find that reason why you want to crochet, and that should help you to get started, help you to want to keep learning. Number two is what? What project have you started with? Really look closely at the project that you started with and be realistic. Is it a project that's suitable for you as a beginner? If you're looking at things like blankets or jumpers, then they are going to be way too advanced. Not only, the stitches might not be too tricky on them, but just the size and the time it takes to make those projects can be really daunting. And it can just be a bit like, well, I'm not going to get it done anytime soon. And it's not necessarily a reflection on your ability. It's just your time, that's all. So you want to look for something that's a smaller project. Go for things like coasters, pot holders, hats, things that aren't going to take too long. Things that you can get finished and you think, oh, I've completed a project, and that makes you feel good. If you've got something like a blanket, and as much as blankets are great for practicing a variety of different stitches, that can come further down. You're better off starting with smaller projects, getting that sense of achievement, and then when you've got that, when you think, oh yeah, I've got the hang of this now, then maybe you want to start going for bigger projects. Okay, so number three. Number three is where. Where are you learning to crochet? Are you in your home? That's lovely. That's probably the most comfortable place for you to be, right? It's where you feel most comfortable. However, when you're sat learning to crochet, are you being distracted? Are you looking up and noticing, oh, there's a washing pile over there that I need to sort out, and oh, there's a pile of dishes to wash in the kitchen? It might be the best place for you to learn, but just consider these things where you are. Is your home the best place to learn, or would it be better maybe to go to a friend's house and go and learn with a friend, maybe in a completely different space where you're not distracted by everyday life? Maybe going to a specific studio like this one here where you can just literally take yourself there, go and learn to crochet, forget about all the normal stuff, and then go back to that later once you've had your time to crochet. You might not be able to do that, but all I would say is maybe try and find yourself somewhere you can go. Maybe it's a local park on a sunny day. Just go and take yourself a blanket, go and sit down somewhere and just sit and have a practice where it's quiet and calm. And again, you're in your own space where you can do your own thing. So just have a think about where the best place is for you to learn to crochet. For some people I know, just suddenly thought about it, a lot of people like to do it on their commute. So maybe they're on the train or on the bus. I can't do it on a bus. Sadly, travel sickness hits me. But it might be that you might have a half an hour journey where you can just put your headphones on, watch a tutorial and get on with a bit of crochet then. It might not work if you're in a particularly busy carriage. It might be the worst place for you to try and do that, but it's something to consider. But really think about where it is that you're learning to crochet and if that might be a factor in why you're really finding it tricky. And number 4 is actually quite linked up to number 3, and that's when you are learning to crochet. So are you picking up your hook and yarn at the end of a long day, when you've had a long day at work, just put the kids to bed, you're really tired, maybe the light's fading because it's getting late into the evening so you can't see very well. It might not be the ideal time for you to try and learn to crochet. But maybe it is. Maybe that's when you're at your best. You might wake up more in the evening and that might be your best time to learn. So if that works for you, brilliant. Maybe it would be better off if you just got up like 10-15 minutes earlier in the morning and you'd like to do it then. That's when I like to do my crochet. I get up in the morning, have my cup of tea, sit down, do 10 or 15 minutes, and it kind of gets me going. It stops me from scrolling on my phone too much, and it kind of just helps my brain adjust to the day, and I start thinking about what I need to do for the day. So that might work for you instead. But just have a little think about when is the best time for you to pick up that hook and yarn. I try not to do it when you're in a rush, like if you've got, having a deadline sometimes is quite helpful, so you're not just sat crocheting for hours on end, because sometimes it can get painful if you're doing it for too long. But I would just say try not to be in a rush. You want to be in a relaxed state of mind. But I would probably say do little and often rather than long stints of time, because it can wear your hands. It can get quite tiring on your hands after a while. So just consider all of those things. If you're able to dedicate 10 minutes of your lunch hour to doing a little bit of crochet, to just carry on with do a row of whatever it is you're doing, that might be the best way to learn. Just have a think about when is a good time for you. Okay, number 5 is the how and with who. So how have you been learning how to crochet? There are many different ways that you could try. Have you been just looking through a book and trying to learn through a book? That's actually how I learned to crochet, and I don't really know how. Well, by doing it that way, I did learn to crochet, but it turns out the way that I was doing it was completely wrong. My technique wasn't brilliant, which I've managed to work out over the years. But yeah, is it through books? Are you looking at tutorials? Now, tutorials are brilliant. You can get some really close, clear, really beautifully put together tutorials on YouTube at the moment. And it's definitely one way that I like to learn. However, I can understand sometimes when you're following the tutorials, sometimes you just need that human, that contact, that reassurance. So perhaps learning with somebody else is actually better for you. Is there a family member that you've been trying to learn with? That doesn't always work. Sometimes it does, if that family member is particularly patient and is happy to teach you. However, I've also heard from many attendees to my sessions that actually no, it doesn't work. Everyone ends up just arguing and everyone gets frustrated and it just doesn't work. So maybe that doesn't work for you, or with a friend or something like that. Or maybe you go to an actual lesson. You search them up. People are popping up, like myself, are popping up all over the place now. wanting to teach other people, because we just want to spread this love of crochet and knitting and all sorts of things that are yarny. So have a look into the lessons and things that are available. But I would say that with an extra, just be careful. Try and look into the circumstances of the teaching. You don't want a class that's going to have lots and lots of students. I specifically, for my getting started with crochet sessions, I only have 2 people so that I'm able to dedicate my time to them, because it is tricky. And if you're trying to get used to holding the hook and yarn properly, to create your different stitches, if the teacher is there with 15, 16, 17, however many more students on the same session, and they've all got their troubles at the same time, there is no way that you're able to get that time that you need to be able to learn properly. It always depends on the stage that you're at, but I would just say be careful and have a look to see how it is. Some places do like courses, so you can keep going back over weeks and weeks, which would be good. It helps you to really direct, and then you might have a bit of a task to do in between the weeks, which is really good. Some do one-off sessions like I do. I just get them to get you started, and if you want to keep coming back to more courses, you can do. You don't have any of that, what's the word? You're not tied in straight away. So you've got that flexibility. If you want to come back for more sessions, you can do. So just think about, how are you learning to crochet and what's the best? I would always say try and get a little balance of all sorts. Try and get a bit of, go to some lessons, but also look at tutorials and look at patterns and look at books. I think having an array of different approaches can be really helpful just to build up your understanding of crochet. Okay, so first half done. How are you feeling? Any of those factors ring in with you? Maybe you're thinking, oh yeah, actually, could give myself a little bit more time, or maybe a morning session of doing some crochet might work for me. Or you might be sitting thinking, oh no, actually, I think I've got that bit all sussed. I've got a nice comfy space, got the time. That's not a problem, Emma. What I'm really struggling with is just the nuts and bolts. I'm really struggling with the practicalities. So we're going to have a little chat now. The next 5 factors are going to be the more practical things. So without more ado, with no more ado, no more waiting, let's get cracking. Okay, so we're at number 6. Okay, the first one in our practical session. Number 6 is your hook. What type of hook are you using to get started with your crochet? There are so many different types out there on the market. It's really daunting knowing what's going to work, and I'm not going to do like a whole piece here about all the different types of crochet hooks and which ones are best and all that. I'll just do a very quick summary of what might work for you and why some hooks might not be so suitable for you, etc. So as you can see here from my small selection that I've got, there's different materials that can be used for your crochet hook. Some are made of metal, some are made of plastic, some are made of wood. Okay, and with that, each of these crochet hooks has a slightly different a different head on it. So the hook is shaped ever so slightly differently. Each manufacturer has a slightly different shape, slightly different style. And honestly, it's almost like when you like in Harry Potter, when he goes into Gringotts, is that the place? That doesn't feel right. Is it Gringotts? No, it's not Gringotts, that's the bank. Wherever it is that he gets his wand from. Where does he get his magic wand from? Anyway. Oh. Move on. When you find a crochet hook that suits you, it's like Harry Potter or any of those witches and wizards when they just get the one. They get the wand that works for them. Pardon me, I'm going off on a tangent now, it's thrown me. But my point is, just because you have this particular crochet hook that Auntie something or other gave you, use that crochet hook because it's there. It just might not suit your hand, the way that you grip, the way that you hold the hook, just might not feel very comfortable in your hand, and that's fine. Maybe you can try a friend's out, or try a different one. If there is somewhere that you can go, the local yarn shop might be able to allow you to just hold a couple of crochet hooks to try them out and have a feel of them. My particular favourites, so over the years I was using this one for years, just the classic shape, mainly because of cost, because they were quite cheap, and also availability. This was the only one that I could really see, but this one here is what I like to use the most now. These ergonomic handles are superb, especially if you hold like knife hold. I think they particularly work. They do work with pen style as well, but I think it just feels particularly nice in your hands. So this one is one of those glorious Clover and More hooks, and I've spoken about how much I love these hooks over the years. I just think they're a game changer. They're a little bit more expensive, but when you're getting started and you want to get on with your project, having a hook that glides through the stitches like this one is so much better. But this might not work for you. You might feel more comfortable having a thinner handle, and that's absolutely fine. My point is, don't just assume that the hook that you've got is the one that you need to use and blame yourself for your crochet not working. It could actually be the hook that you are using. So consider that, and consider using a different one to try that out. Okay, moving on to number 7. And this is your yarn type, and that means the fibre and also the thickness of the yarn that you are using. So I would always say use what your hands feel most comfortable with. Okay, I'm just going to go through the different types of yarn fibre, and I'm going to say their pros and cons to each of them and why they might work or they might not work. Okay, so I'm just going to make this as quick as I can and short and succinct as possible, but hopefully it'll give you a little bit of a guidance, and it might just make you think, that's the reason why that's happening. Anyway, so the first one, let's go for a good old classic acrylic. Okay, a good old classic acrylic is cheap. It tends to be quite nice and soft in the hands. It sometimes has quite a nice little bit of a stretch to it, so it's got a nice give to it at the same time. However, acrylic does have a tendency to pill, to fluff, to have that kind of little halo. So as you're using it, especially when you're starting, you'll find that your hands might get a bit clammy and a bit sticky because you're really struggling to get your hook in. And sometimes it can just cause the yarn just to rough up a little bit, which as in like your work and also the yarn as it's going through your fingers. So as it's starting to rough up a little bit, it makes the stitch definition quite tricky. So as you're trying to work into your stitches, it becomes a bit trickier for you to see where you're working your stitches into. So just take care with the acrylic. There are pros to it, but if you're finding it really hard to find those stitches, that could be the reason. Moving on from that, one type of yarn that is particularly good for seeing the stitches is cotton. It's a brilliant yarn. It is really clear where your stitches are. As you're creating your stitches, as you go back, you can see each of the stitches quite clearly. However, with cotton, it can get a little bit tough on the hand sometimes because it doesn't have that give that acrylic does, and also sometimes can be a bit splitty. Depends how it's been wound, but some yarns, cotton yarns, can be quite splitty. So as you're learning to crochet again, so if you haven't got your hook and yarn combination quite right, if your hook is one that drags quite a lot through your stitches, that can cause your yarn to split a little bit. So again, something to consider. I like using cotton. I think it's a really good one for teaching how to, especially when you're making coasters and things, because cotton's just a nice yarn to use for things like that. But I particularly like to use cotton. Obviously there's wool, and wool I would always say is a wonderful material to work with. It's more on the pricey side. So as you're beginning, maybe you get a little bit nervous about using the wool because you don't want to waste it because it's so precious, because wool is so very, very precious, and yeah, it can become a little bit more expensive. But there are some lovely wools out there that you could definitely learn to crochet with if you've got a little bit of extra that you're able to spend on that. That's fine. What I would say is avoid things like the chenilles that have that real fluffy. Anything really fluffy is going to make your life harder when you're learning to crochet. So avoid all those really like like those fancy yarns. Anything that's a little bit quirky, a bit different, the fuzzy ones, the fluffy ones, the glittery ones. avoid those. You don't want any of those. I would say stick with a plain colour in either an acrylic or cotton, but my absolute, what I would definitely say is the best, is a cotton acrylic blend. So you get that nice mix of the comfort of the acrylic, but also the stitch definition of the cotton. So if you can find a good cotton acrylic blend, the Sirdar, what's it called? Sirdar Stories, I think is a brilliant yarn to use. Alternatively, if you want to start, you could get started with like the thicker yarns, really chunky yarns, and that, you know, using the really chunky hooks. That can really help you to get going with the technique to start with your crochet. And things like the t-shirt yarn like this here are superb for making projects that work up really quickly. And again, you're able to see your stitch definition. So don't look at this particular stitch because this one is a tricky one, but you know, you can see the stitch definition really nicely. Something you can make up really quickly, it's quite nice to use. Yeah, so ultimately it depends on the project you are making, but just consider which of those yarns you think would work best for you. I would always say try to go for one of the slightly thicker yarns, definitely Aran weight, maybe DK weight would be okay, but definitely Aran weight and above, just so that you can really feel that yarn nicely. Don't go for the thinner yarns, you don't want to start there, and the hooks much too tricky at the beginning stage. But really do think about the types of yarn that you are using, and it could be that's causing you might be causing you some difficulty, and maybe you just need to change to a different type of yarn. Number 8 is the pattern. We've talked about patterns already, about the different types of patterns and what it is that you're trying to make. My point here is I would only ever choose a pattern that you want to make. That's ultimately what I'm going to say. Don't try and make something that you're not really bothered about. I got started with crochet because I fell in love with amigurumi. I bought a book on amigurumi and I was determined to create as many of the little creatures in that book that I could. That was my drive, that was my reason. So find a pattern that you know that you would really like to make. Fall in love with what the final product is and do whatever you can to be able to make that project. Adding on to that, I just want to say something about the patterns that you are using. Now, in this day and age, there are so many patterns available that you can buy these days on Ravelry, Etsy, you know, loads of free patterns that are out there as well. Just be careful because there are so many different ways that people write patterns. So to start with, you've got to make sure that you understand that there is a US terminology and a UK terminology. That always confuses people initially. So that part will be an initial thing to think about. But also, you're better off, and I would always recommend an initial thing to think about, but also you're better off, and I would always recommend probably going for a pattern that's written by one of the larger yarn brands, only because everyone's got a slightly different style of writing their pattern. And actually, I would probably recommend that you find a style of pattern that works for you with a yarn brand that probably works for you, and then get to grips with that style to start with. And then you might, once you really understand what all the different parts of all the different abbreviations and terms are in the pattern, then maybe you can start going towards some other makers, pattern designers instead. Number 9 is a bit of a boring one, but are you holding the hook and the yarn the right way? Have you found your way? Has someone told you a specific way and it's just not clicking? Well, that's okay, because there are a multitude of different ways to hold your hook and yarn. I don't hold mine in the traditional way. However, I do teach it the traditional way, and then it allows the students to then go off and decide if they want to carry on that way or if they want to choose a different way. I would look through all the different tutorials that are on YouTube. There are so many options on YouTube at the moment for people showing you different ways of holding the hook and the yarn. And that ultimately is the most boring bit, but it's actually the bit if you don't get that bit right, the rest is never going to work properly. Okay, so really think about, how do you want to hold your hook? Is it more comfortable that you hold it in the knife style? Or do you prefer to hold it pen or pencil style? Okay, do you like to have the yarn wrapped around your finger at the top here and use that, and use these two fingers to hold your work? Or like me, do you prefer to have your yarn going over your middle finger and you're holding your work with these fingers? I'm not going to give you a proper specific tutorial as to how to hold it. I'll do that in a different video. But that's something that you just need to consider. Don't worry if the way that you are doing it at the moment doesn't seem to quite work, if it doesn't feel right. Either keep practicing with it and see if it clicks, because sometimes it does just need practice, or try different ways, because it's only through trying different ways that you're going to find a way that really clicks. And it is going to be through time as well. Okay, so just think about how it is that you're holding your hook and your yarn. And number 10 is time. And by that I mean it takes time to learn to crochet. It's not going to happen very quickly. It's not going to happen overnight. Yes, for some people it clicks quicker. For other people it takes a bit more practice, and that's okay. But what I would say is, if you do go to a lesson, or if you do learn to crochet with somebody, don't put the hook and yarn down for weeks on end afterwards and then expect to be able to pick it up and start all over again, and it'll just, you know, you'll remember it all, because you won't. You'll have forgotten how you do it. So I would always say, if you've been to a lesson, or if you've just learned and it's clicked and you think, oh, I've got it, try to be consistent if you can, and just keep practicing. A great time is actually, like, if you're going to go away on a break or on a holiday or something. I'm aware that some airlines don't allow you to bring your hook and your needles on the flight, so maybe put it in your luggage. But so obviously, yeah, be careful with all that business. But just having like a long stint of time where you can just sit and just kind of over a series of days, that's how I would say is the best way to practice. So just little and often over a longer period is always going to work well for your practice. But that's brought us to the end. Good luck. I hope some of these pointers have been helpful for you. If there's anything that you would like me to talk more specifically about, particularly, you know, like maybe about the different types of hook that you can use, the different types of yarns you can use, maybe you want me to do a little video on how to hold the hook and yarn properly, please let me know. Also, I was thinking about maybe doing a video on beginner projects, like what would be really good like starter projects, and I'll find some patterns that work well. So if that's something that you fancy, please let me know in the comments. In the meantime, please subscribe and like this video if it's been something that you found really valuable. But I look forward to seeing you in a future video. But thank you for stopping by, and I'll see you again soon.